A very warm welcome to the IBDP Extended Essay Cafe. My name is Aarti, and like you, I'm also an educator. I have 8 years of experience as an IB educator and CAS coordinator. I have taught computer science and ITGS in DP and design in MYP. As we wait for others to join us, we would love to know where you are joining us from. Please put down your name and city in the chat box. Just to see the variety, of people or the variety of demographic that we have in today's session. Right, so we have Gopal from Prague, great, Nara from Armenia, Adil from Karachi, Ankita from Pune, Larry from Taiwan, Maushami from Mumbai, from Singapore. Great, thank you so much. It is great to see the rich variety of educators we have with us from across the globe. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Dr. Trivedi, if I may request you to move to the next slide, please. Right. So Toddle is currently used by over 25,000 educators across 1,100 plus PYP and MYP schools. We have schools from all over the world, the US, Asia Pacific, Europe, and the Middle East. The program is also available in Spanish. Just like Toddle for PYP and MYP, Toddle for DP will be a comprehensive end-to-end learning solution, teaching and learning solution. The platform will include a plethora of features like curriculum planning and resource library, DP core modules, assessment and feedback, progress reports, student portfolios, family communication, classroom management, and streamlined authorization and evaluation. We're doing a quick walkthrough to show you the DP extended essay module today after the closing session at 12:45 p.m. GMT. Do drop into that session using the link in the chat. I'm just putting the link in the chat right now for you guys. Dr. Trivedi, if you could move to the next slide, please. Yeah, so coming to the housekeeping part of it now, some basic things. We request you to keep your videos on and put yourselves on mute. Type your questions if you have any in the chat box. At various times, Dr. Trivedi will ask you to pause and reflect. You can use the chat feature to interact. While typing into the chat box, we would request you to select everyone so that everyone gets the messages that you're typing in. This meeting has been developed independently from and is not endorsed by the IB. And we really thank all the speakers for joining us here for this e-cafe. Please do not forget to tag your learnings from the session using the hashtag e-cafe and tag Toddle across social media. I'll be putting some links for the same on chat right now. Moving on, let me now introduce our speaker, Dr. Trivedi. So today's session and the agenda, in today's session, we'll be exploring extended essay guidance for world studies with our speaker, Dr. Love Trivedi. Dr. Love Trivedi is an experienced physics teacher and ATL coordinator with a demonstrated history of working in the higher education industry. He is an IBDP World Studies Examiner, IBDP Design Technology Examiner, IGCSE Physics Examiner, SIPSA Job-alike Session Facilitator, and core team member of the sciencediaries.org. He also works as IBDP CAS coordinator and IYP award leader. Having received formal training and education in the subjects of physics, educational technology, curriculum development, and as he claims football, Dr. Trivedi is a versatile leader and educator. He graduated with a master's degree in physics from the University of Mumbai and attended a postgraduate diploma in industrial automation and RFID systems from Siemens. On the side, Dr. Trivedi is an amateur archaeologist who has also completed a certified astrobiology and extraterrestrial life. But above all else, Dr. Trivedi values sustainability and collaboration, values he hopes to bring to the table wherever he goes. A strong motivator for implementing SDGs, he has also been appreciated by the Indian Book of Records for his work in sustainability. We are so happy to have you here with us, Dr. Trivedi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ritu.
And now it's over to you, Dr. Trivedi, for today's session. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you for such an amazing introduction. So, as you know, that I am an examiner of World Studies Extended Essay, and there are a few learnings and few progresses which I have made in my correction. My students have learned a lot from me in the past few years, which I want to share with everyone. Where I started with and where am I right now has made me grown into extended essays. I am very fond of IB DP core. The core is the heart of diploma program, and I believe to learn each and every core deeply. So I started with CAS. I worked as a CAS coordinator for 4 years. Then I started doing physics extended essay. Then I got to know about world studies, and that is what impressed me the most. Going more into sustainability, bringing in more disciplines, learning new subjects, how to incorporate different subjects into extended essays, how to incorporate CAS into extended essays. So various things I'm going to discuss. So few of our main learning objectives will be as follows. So what exactly is World Studies Extended Essay? To develop a clear understanding of requirements for choosing the World Studies Extended Essay, and to have a very clear understanding of how to apply assessment criteria when it comes to world studies, because we all know the criteria are very general in nature when it comes to marking. Same set of criteria are given for every subject and world studies as well. But when it comes to world studies, the application of criteria, the understanding of criteria is something which we need to keep in mind. It took me a year to understand as an examiner what are the expectations. When I went through training, when I understood, oh, these are the expectations, I used to understand it in a very different way. For me, use of interdisciplinary approach or to bring in two subjects was not what I started, or not how I interpreted my subject guide to be, or the guidance which was provided by IT on website. So you have to go through thorough processes and few iterations to understand how to exactly use subject specific terminology when it comes to world studies. Doing a physics extended essay and doing a world studies extended essay, though it is physics and some other subject, the application of terminologies and application of formulae are very different. I can't employ a traditional approach. I cannot just go on with the traditional approach. Then there are certain sets of requirements which I have learned and would like to share with you. And since this is what Toddle is calling as e-cafe, I'll try to facilitate as much as I can, and I'll try to learn something from you. I'll try to share whatever I know so far. So let's begin. The first thing is all about nature of extended essay. Let's try to understand what IB puts up. There are these two lines which are written by IB that World Studies invites students to conduct an in-depth interdisciplinary investigation into an issue of contemporary global importance. At first, it appears very simple. Okay, I just need to bring in two subjects and I need to do a very deep research into this and something related to local global. But there are 2 or 3 keywords which have, like, if I just sit and start elaborating this particular statement, I can write 2 pages on it. So first thing is in depth, how detailed my essay should be. What do I basically mean by interdisciplinary? It's just to bring 2 subjects, or can I, like, it, if I like chemistry and bio, can I bring any 2 subjects, or it has to be something related to my RPO topic? So how do I choose this? 2 subjects are also very important. Then contemporary word is what we are going to discuss more in detail as we progress in this presentation, and what is global importance. How do we miss out on a mark when it comes to global importance? Now, there are certain aims like each and every subject has, like physics has their fixed aims which we need to follow and keep in mind, like what are the IB's expectations. Same things are with world studies extended essay. So we need to frame and understand complex contemporary world problems for in-depth studies. So I cannot create a problem. Okay, this is problem which I am facing. I cannot do a world study extended essay on a problem which I am facing. It should be a problem which is faced by a population. It could be a smaller population or it could be a larger population, and you should be in a situation to link it to a global problem, one of the global issues. Then we need to research and gather and bring in subject specific terminologies for two subjects to address the same issue. It's not like that first I'm going to do physics investigation, then I'm going to do something in history, and then I'll say, okay, physics proves this, history proves this. Yes, I have used both the subjects. How to integrate two subjects and form something known as integrative arguments are must, and which is very important. Now, develop global consciousness. 1 mark, I'm marking extended essays, I'm removing 1 mark from reflections just because I can't see any global consciousness, because nobody is understanding what do we mean by local global relationship. It doesn't mean that I take a local example and I take a global problem and I just start writing about it. How do I bring in those dynamic interactions when it comes to global consciousness? Then the last aim which tells us is you should be interpreters, you should be evaluative. Your essay should not be descriptive. You should evaluate your sources, evaluate what you have, evaluate your supervisors, what your supervisors are trying to tell you. So you should act, you should be a good actor. Yeah. Okay, I am facing this problem. Let's it's like more like a personal engagement. I should be very much or highly engaged in the research which I am doing. So these are the 4 aims of World Studies Extended Essay. So IB simply recommends that you use 2 diploma subjects, one of which you must be studying. So it's not necessary that if I want to do a research on physics and philosophy, but philosophy is one of the subjects which my school doesn't offer, or it's not one of the subjects which I have chosen, but physics is the subject which I'm studying at HL or SL level, I'm still allowed to go for world studies and choose that subject which is not ever taught in my school. And yes, we are allowed to have external supervisors when it comes to 2 different subjects. So my student can have one supervisor who will lead the investigation, who will lead the or supervise the student, and we can have other additional supervisors at stages who can guide students. So this year I did a world studies extended essay in English with psychology, both of which were not my forte, but yes, I have been working in psychology. English was not my strength. So I incorporated various colleagues, not only from my school, but I reached out to supervisors from other schools also who we met through ICE. And yes, they can interview, take few suggestions. They can help what type of sources you need to take. So world studies is something which is very unique in nature. I need to gather as much data as I can. I need to interact as much as I can with my teachers, with my interviewee, different type of person who are expert in that fields. Everything is allowed when it comes to world studies. There are 6 global themes that we need to restrict ourselves to. So the first and the foremost thing that a student should do when it comes to world studies is choose a global theme. What particular global theme I am interested in? Or I may have a topic in my mind. I want to work with certain abnormality. I want to work with bipolar disorders. And then I can think of 2 contexts. Okay, I want to link it with English and psych, but where does it fit? Where does my idea fit? So you need to figure out and make a mind map with respect to these global themes. If you fail to do so, your entire criteria A gets spoiled. The entire criteria A is all about focus and method. We need to talk about rational, like why I want to do this particular investigation. And if student fails to write that, it's the student's loss. So it's always better if we have a brainstorming session on global themes itself. What I tell my students is go to Global Goals website. There is UN Global Goals website, and there are 17 goals stated there itself. think of an idea from those particular targets and aims which are placed there. There are 17 goals, and then link those goals to one of this global theme, and then start developing on your topic. So science, technology, society, health development, and environment and economic sustainability have been my strong points. I have always worked mostly in these three fields, but and slowly, like few extended essays I have done in culture, language, and identity as well. Conflict, peace, and security I have marked, but I have not done it with my students explicitly. Again, equality and inequality being a very sensitive topic, I have never done it, but I have marked it, and I got the idea of what their expectations are. So I would like to share those things with you as well. Now, I was talking about a very important point of global consciousness. What do I mean by global consciousness? There's something known as global sensitivity. As an individual, as a writer, as a researcher, as a student, I need to be sensitive to a local phenomena. So it would be better if I choose a local example which I am aware of or I have researched a lot about, because just taking an example from US and I have no idea about what's going on there, I'm just reading the text and I'm trying to analyze the source, would not make me globally sensitive in that case. So what are the broader developments that are taking place on planet? How is my topic related to greenhouse effect of global warming in somehow? So you need to link your topics in various ways. So answer to this global consciousness can also come through global sensitivity, or it can come through a global understanding. Where are we? What our planet is facing? What are the various problems faced by a global crowd? So the capacity to think and act in flexible and informed ways when it comes to local global approach. Me, I am from India. Right now, I may be from a village where people are little narrow-minded and which are not open to talk about homosexuality. But I need to understand, if I'm talking about a particular community, I'm going there to interview people. I cannot simply start asking such sensitive questions. I need to understand that local case study in a better way. When it comes to taxi markets and Shanghai, what is going wrong? What is happening wrong? Okay, there is progress as with respect to technology, but what are those human minds going through? So selecting sources, what the author is doing, how authentic the source is, and at what particular time the source was written are some things that we can always keep in mind while we are trying to explain our sources. Then comes you as a global self, a perception of myself as a global actor. I am a member of certain local community. Local means not restricted to India or my particular state. I am a member of a particular community. Human community also becomes a community, a city, nation, and humanity. So when it comes to humanimals, like human and animals coming together, how we are making a positive contribution to the world. So these are certain points that we can include when it comes to writing an introduction or writing an rational in world studies extended essay. I'm not saying we'll use the word global sensitivity, global understanding, or global self directly, but somehow or the other, the writing part in few lines of the introduction should reflect one of the three dimensions or an integration of all three dimensions. Also, when it comes to global consciousness, now I'll open question to all of you, like what do you understand when I just say global sensitivity? Can you put your responses in the chat box? It's a very sensitive topic, and it's something which we need to understand and we can discuss more on. So it would be great if you put in your idea, then I'll just pick up and I'll read and I'll start discussing the same thing. Yes, our world studies extended essays are linked to global issues as a whole. So my biggest umbrella is my global issue, global warming. But my local phenomena could be scarcity of water in a particular desert. So yes, local and global. But what do we specifically mean by global sensitivity? If you would like to, I even if you don't have any idea, but what does this word bring to your mind when you hear this particular word? Acceptance to debating views on global issues, 100%. So whenever a source is being identified, I identify a very authentic source from a very authentic website, but it's written by a human, it's written by someone who must maybe expert in that field. But yes, you can always debate the views. That is why IB always uses a word known as integrative arguments. We are not supposed to just believe in that source and write. Okay, the facts cannot be altered, but when it comes to understanding of the facts, yes, you are the one who are going to make the arguments. So 100% sensitizing with some issues with a global concern. Our topic may be seen from different perspectives, 100%. So when it comes to integration of two subjects, it's not just how am I going to find two theories which solves or answers my argue. It's about answering a problem which you selected with. Many times while we are marking extended essays, we come to know that like it appears that yes, you chose a topic just for doing the investigation. You never identified a problem. You stated the problem just for doing world studies because you wanted to use two subjects. But in the end, in your conclusion and evaluation, what you started with is not answered. So the best part is always whatever you have written in your introduction, try to go back after your report is written and see whether you are answering all the open statements that you open in the end. That is how extended essay should be ending. Global issues don't manifest themselves in the same way everywhere. One local case, 100%. One local case doesn't tell the full story. So these are the few things which we need to take care about while we are writing an introduction. Now come to global understanding. So more or less now we can connect what global sensitivity, what global self, and what global understanding is. And sensitivity and understanding are more or less related to each other. But you as a global self, what would you advise a student to write to explain, oh, how am I put, where am I going to put in my extended essay as an evidence of global self? Where do I explain this thing? So I'll go to the previous slide and I'll just open up all the description so that you can respond to this thing in a better way. So when it comes to global self, what do you think? How you are going to explain an examiner that yes, you took care of global consciousness? We already discussed about sensitivity and understanding. More or less, all your answers, all your responses are relating to one of the two key terms. But what about global self? So how my writing could be, like I have chosen a local case of I have scarcity of food due to pandemic and my community does not have food. There is no food at all. So I cannot simply just say, okay, there is no food at all. What am I trying to say? What's my perception in this case? Thinking globally and act locally. So we cannot be rash. We cannot use statements because of this person, we don't have this food. So coming to Ukraine-Russia war, which is very sensitive, we should be in a state not to bring in our emotions directly while writing extended essays. You can bring in an argument which you are trying to make, but any open statements, any facts that you are stating without reference would not be considered, or we won't, like we would read it, but we won't consider it as a fact supporting your arguments. So if I make an argument that this person is responsible for this particular thing, or this source has clearly identified that this is the case because of which this thing has happened, but imagine that author might be supporting that person, but we could have another writer who is supporting the opposite person. So analyzing source is very important when it comes to global self. You identify a source, you select a source, but how we are identifying that particular source makes me a global self. So I answer this particular global consciousness while I am selecting my sources and while I'm analyzing my sources. So this is what I tell my students, that you be little sensitive when you choose a topic and do answer whenever you open up any problem in your introduction. Do have a closing statement in the end, in the evaluation, or maybe in the end of the conclusion. And when it comes to global self, I take care of this part in my source selection when I'm stating certain facts. Exactly. So what Gopal says makes sense. Good student. Exactly. So if as I move ahead in my slide, I'm going to show I have written a note explaining to be a global. So I'll tell you how reflection. So I like the statement that before I stated somebody is talking about stating about global self in reflection. That is where we are searching. That is where we take away most of the mark, because we do not see students do write reflection as per the criteria, but they forget that they are writing reflections for world studies. And yes, in world studies, we do need global consciousness to be answered, or a global case or something about global problem to be answered. You can't just write here, I identified a global problem and this is what I'm going to do. But how you were globally conscious can be reflected in RPPF form as well. And it's one of the best places to write that thing. So to be globally conscious, one should have information about the world. So I choose a topic of bipolar disorders, but I have not done enough studies. I'm just restricting myself to IB textbooks. That's not going to help me. Restricting myself to certain set of communities and not exploring it to on a global level is also not wise. So I'm not asking you to analyze all the resources, but take more than one perspectives. So if I talk about a war between one country and the another countries, I should not focus on sources from one country. I should try to find few sources from the other countries as well. This is what I need. Two different perspectives should be studied in a better way. Now, there should be a distinctive way of being in the world. You exhibit, you try to show how you were attentive to the global phenomena. Many I extended essays were on COVID-19 this year, but there were few students who identified very different aspect of the pandemic. How positively were we able to cope up with certain facts, how vaccine manufacturing and economic cost, so many other uh, topics were also chosen by the students, and they didn't only restricted themselves to a global phenomena. So we need to see how our local realities also take place. Be reflective about your role in local, national, and global context. Now, I exhibit global consciousness when I'm attentive, when I understand the issues in depth, and as one of you mentioned, RPPF is very, very important. So answer this thing in your RPPF, especially in the first or the last reflection, is when you're going to say how global conscious you were. You can't fake it out, because it won't be easy just to write in one line, because okay, RPPF is marked separately, but when I read all three of the reflections, right from your rational to your evaluation, everything I should be in a situation to read RPPF. I am spending more time on global consciousness because straight 1 mark has been deducted because I don't find anything in the reflections about this part. And then student figure out why was I given 1 mark less when I had met all the criteria which guide says. But you forget to see the guidance document of world studies, which says that yes, you should have a global cost associated with your research. So note, RPPF should have a line indicating a line or an explanation or some description about your global consciousness. Now there is a proposed sequence which I came up with. I had to do many alterations, but now from last 4 years, this sequence has been working for me. I always ask my students to work or to pick up a global theme. And this is where our RPAF document researchers reflection space starts coming out. So they make their reflection space and they create a mind map and they start with global theme. So I choose my global theme. So it's already narrowed down. I had a very unfocused and a broad perspective. Now I'm narrowing down to one of the global themes. So very good start is done in my one of the sessions. Then the next thing which I ask student is pick up a topic related to this global theme. Okay, I'm talking about science, technology, and society, but what aspect do you want to study? Okay, I want to study something about electric vehicles. I want to study something about pollution. I want to restrict myself to global warming related to science and technology. I want to talk about the advancement of solar panels. I want to talk about the advancement of design and technology of a solar panel. So all those aspects will come in topic. So topic selection is broad. It's not highly focused, but when we look from a larger umbrella, I have narrowed down myself from 6 themes to 1 theme. Now in that 1 theme, I have a topic and then I choose the disciplinary lens. Now 1 and 2 can be interchanged, 2 and 1 can be interchanged from student to student, from supervisor to supervisor. So Miss Ritu, you can note down few questions as and when once I finish my explanation, after this slide, I'll ask you to just help me out with the questions if I'm missing out something on the chat box.
Sure, I'll do that.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So topic is very, very important, and disciplinary lenses. So many students say that, oh, my university, it will look great if I do physics and DT. Yeah, if I do physics and math, it's going to look good. But doing that, they end up writing a very bad extended essay. So I would always bring in the disciplinary lens in my third step, so that students are not carried away. Then they also get a better idea. They have discussed so much. They are a brainstorming session has gone into so much detail that now my students are ready to identify the real subjects, the real theory which can be identified. Now, in disciplinary lenses, we do talk about which theory do you think is valid in this topic, which theory can be applied. If I am not an expert in field, I'll ask them to go to their teachers and discuss with them, and they'll say, oh, this theory can be applied. And if few students who are very stubborn, I do want to study about this topic, but I don't know which other subjects to choose. This is where our role as a supervisor comes in. So should we ask student to narrow it down and go and do this particular extended essay in this subject? Or should we encourage student and try to find a scope? Yes, second subject can be used. So student support by a supervisor comes mainly when it comes to choice of subject. This is where our importance is. If we fail to catch a student at this stage that no, this cannot be done as a world studies, you think that your theory can be applied, but it will be applied in a descriptive manner and not in an evaluative way. I know that everything is associated with economics, there is cost attached to it, but there is no model which can explain my topic in detail. So in that case, you can ask a student to change the topic a bit so that another subject can be brought in, or you can simply discard the idea of world studies and ask the student to say, no, your question is amazing, everything is great, so you should go and do an individual investigation in one subject. It depends from supervisor to supervisor and student teacher relationship. Then brainstorming argues. Let student come up with 10 different argues. Number 4 is where we spend most of the time. Sometimes it happens that after writing, analyzing, we realize that, okay, we wanted to answer this question, but I think we're answering this question in a different way. Let's go back and change an argue. So what happens, many schools do not allow students to change argue. Change of argues are not allowed. But when it comes to world studies, we have to understand we are bringing in 2 subjects. We are bringing in a global issue. We are bringing in a local case study. Sometimes when student goes into detail, starts researching more, this is when the idea becomes more stronger and students starts understanding his research better. So let's give that flexibility to student that, okay, initially when he or she started, they had no idea what I'm going to do, but now they have learned with you that, oh, so many things can be done. Can I go back and just tweak my argue a bit? So those things can be allowed. This year I have allowed my students to change one part of an argue after writing a conclusion, because he felt that my conclusion will be more focused, my essay will be more focused if I go back and change only small element of this, and that research turned out to be more focused. Then it comes to sources of data collection. We have to explain each and every stage in the introduction of our World Studies Extended Essay. The introduction of World Studies Extended Essay can be longer as compared to the other extended essays. So subject specific extended essays, I have seen few schools giving restricted number. You should have only 800 words on your introduction, but let World Studies have a bigger introduction. If a student can explain an examiner what the entire picture is going to be like, right from global theme to the analysis part. So my introductions on my students, what they write is, I chose the idea of global theme as science, technology, and society because of this aspect, just one line, not much descriptive. Then coming to topic, explaining that topic with respect to 2 subjects. When I talk about 2 subjects, this is where I'll talk about what theory I'm going to use. So I'm going to use photoelectric effect from physics to explain this part, but I'm not going to explain that theory there itself. I'm just going to say that I'm telling an examiner I've identified my lenses and I also identified my lenses in a better way because I know what I'm going to do. Then I'm going to talk about the selection of sources, primary or secondary. So I can say in physics, I'm going to do primary data collection and then I'm going to do secondary. And in psychology, I'm going to only do secondary data analysis, but I'm also going to do few interviews. So tell an examiner everything that you're going to do in this particular investigation and end it by saying what kind of arguments you're planning to make coming to sources of data collection and how authentic your sources were. Where did you identify these sources from? If you read the criteria properly, there is a statement saying students have identified, or there is a line about identification of sources of data collection. So it means that how did I find these sources and how did I figure out that these sources are going to support my topic? This makes my introduction little larger as compared to other subjects. Ms. Ritu, do we have any questions until now?
Yes, we do have 2 questions. Do you want to take them right now?
Just one of them.
Sure. Okay, so there are 2 questions from Mr. Gopal Menon. The first one is there a specific requirement for the global theme to be explicitly stated? He says that it is a good idea to help focus the essay, even if it is not a requirement, but is it a specific requirement?
So when it comes to marking criteria A, I do mark, so see criteria A, the cover page, when it comes to cover page of an extended essay, I'll just stick to world studies extended essay. I can mark it with respect to criteria A and criteria D as well. If I don't see a title, I don't see, if you don't mention a global theme, it becomes unclear to an examiner sometimes. What is student exactly doing? Is it more into climate and climate change, or it's more into science, technology, and society? Are we talking about this or that? So the mindset of examiner also is not focused at that time. As an examiner, we would know which global themes we are marking. But yes, if everything else is clear and no global theme is mentioned, an examiner will mention, okay, the evidences for science, technology, and society were same, even though student didn't mention it explicitly. So it's not a direct requirement that if I fail to write global theme, I won't get marks. But sometimes it's marked, like with respect to few other aspects. When we are supposed to do permutation, okay, there are 2 things missing out, let me take away a mark. So it's always a great idea, according to me, to include a global theme on your cover page. Do mention which global theme we are working in. Then comes topic, because how IB coordinator will also need an information that which global theme are you working on, because IB will also have to accordingly give it to the examiners who are expert in particular fields. So global theme, mentioning global theme won't take much. So do mention it in a cover page. Then topic, title, and I'm going to show you the format as we progress.
Shall I go to the next question?
Yeah.
Okay, so there is another question from Gautam. It says, with regards to disciplinary lenses, methods from one discipline to explore an issue from another discipline count as being interdisciplinary. Was I audible?
I think I'll just read it again. So the research method from, yes, to some extent. So now here comes the importance of arguments. What kind of arguments I'm going to place in while writing, while doing critical analysis, what I'm going to write is very important. How I'm going to present. So idea is not wrong, but how I'm going to present is very important. So let's move ahead, but we'll have a great discussion in the end on this. So we are going to now discuss about world studies introduction. I had a few pointers which I wanted to give about world studies introduction. Then how to choose global theme, choosing an interdisciplinary subject, how to frame and argue. So I think first 3 points, more or less, I have just given you a glimpse of what are the expectations. Then source selection, local global approach, and integrative arguments. The finding a focus for world studies has always been the trickiest part. People have been confused, like, to understand what actually world studies need. What does that world mean? The word global mean. So we need to identify a topic of global significance which resonates with a student, and let's not force a student to pick up this particular global topic. And local context does not mean a local topic related to my country or my city. It could be from anywhere else. The word local means a smaller context which links to a global topic. So then developing a clear, rational and research focus. A student should have a clear idea right from the beginning. What are my expectations? Where am I trying to go? Nowhere should I divert from my route. If I know I want to reach and find answer to this question, I should stick to this. Even though if your source is giving you some other information which has nothing to do with RQ, don't state it. Finally, decide which subject disciplines are most useful to combine and answer the RQ. So coming to nature of RQ, let's do a quick activity. Let's plan a world studies extended essay like a new student. So I'll play the role of your supervisors and try to act as a student, and I'll give you a few instructions which I want you to follow. So Padlet link will be shared by Ms. Ritu in the chat box. So I want everyone to go to that Padlet link and name your Padlet and start writing a question. So what we are going to do is you're going to write in detail about a global theme which you like or which you prefer to choose as a student right away. So I have entered a class, I have discussed few things with you, and I'm asking you to choose a global theme. So you're going to choose a global theme, and just to make your task easier, I'm just going to present all the global themes in front of you. So there are 6 global themes. So you choose a global theme, you identify a problem, and you identify a topic. That's the first thing which you are going to do. And then try to see if we can come up with certain research question. Research question means it's okay if it goes little unfocused in the beginning, but identification of theme, identification of a problem, and identification of topic is what I'm looking at it first. So there is a activity framing a research question. I would like you to add your proposed RQs in that place. So I'll present my Padlet as well. So you can just click on this plus and try to enter your selections. So I'm giving, this would be a 10-minute activity so that I could see few research questions popping in. Start creating Padlets so that we can see live. I can see people joining the Padlets now. I can see 3 or 4, more than 4 people now on Padlet. So the first thing, activity framing and RQ, add your proposed RQs. Just click on plus and start adding your Padlets. Start contributing to the Padlets. Write a global theme which you are choosing so that I know which global theme you are working on, and add a topic of your interest, and let's try to frame an RQ. So even if you fail to give me an RQ, if you are not able to think right now, or sometimes it happens, that is the stage where I face most difficulties. Okay, equality and non-inequality is the theme which I am working on. Now add a topic under environmental or economic sustainability that we are more interested into. So I could see one topic, solid domestic waste. To what extent change in economic policies related to solid domestic waste management in Singapore has impacted volume of solid domestic waste production from 2015 to 2021. So more or less an RQ has been stated. And I'm also going to show you a few RQs which have received A grades. And this Padlet is what we are going to keep it on, and we are going to add many resources to this Padlet. I'm going to create a resource bank on this Padlet itself, wherein I'm going to add various links which will give you all the information and all the good websites developed by various supervisors, which sometimes comes very handy. So there are 2 to 3 websites which make more sense and which are highly effective. I'm going to post the link to those websites soon. But I wanted every one of you to just do this activity so that it makes more sense. So caste discrimination in India through historical exploration and book Untouchable by Mulkraj Anand. So when we add the book, it becomes focused, but so caste discrimination with respect to this book is identified, but when it comes to historical exploration, it becomes little unfocused. So I'm just worried, what history are we studying about caste discrimination? Like what aspect? I understood the problem of caste discrimination is very big, but what are you focusing on? What in caste discrimination? What are we trying to answer here? So I just put forward few questions like this in front of my student and to see whether they are able to justify or they are able to answer my questions. So there should be an issue of global concern properly established and paired with relevant case study as well. So we need to justify our approach, why we are going to take this. So what is global issue of my extended essays? What is my RQ? Then we ask students to give me a purpose. What is the purpose? Why are you trying to do this? What is your statement of intent? Try to ask these questions and it will trigger their thinking. Then at this point, I'll ask, what do you want your conclusion to be? Why is this more of an interest to you? Is it more academic study that you want to do, or it's like you're focusing on a professional community? Why this particular case about caste discrimination that you chose is a good case study for you? What are the limitations that I'm going to face in general? What are the limitations? What you think? Now, once say I approve this RQ written, how to work on e-waste and help in environment. Still a good RQ, good topic, I would say. We need to make it more and more focused. So how to work on e-waste, okay, and help environment. So it's very, very, very open because you're opening up various ways in which I can help environment. I'll have to stick to one particular way. I'll have to, when it comes to selecting a local problem, I may pick up a problem near my area where I have a lot of e-waste happening. But to help an environment to get rid of this e-waste or to find various solutions, this is still an unfocused question. To what extent did the nationalist independence movement in Yugoslavia in the 1990s create greater variation in language? So this is a highly focused RQ which we can use. How has international aid received during Syrian crisis played a role in economic growth and development of Lebanon? So this can be used as RQ. So good. I can see a lot of question and I have experts in the field. I can see by the way you have written the questions, I can feel that you have been doing this world studies extended essays. So in other words, it is here that you clearly set out parameters and direction of your world studies extended essay. This is where we start the section of critical thinking. If your student starts showing the skills of critical thinking and time management from the introduction itself, critical thinking, everyone thinks that it's just marked from the analysis itself, but the process of marking critical thinking is holistic in nature. Remember, the best introductions are written at the end of project so that we know the answer. So once I have written down my essay, sometimes we feel that, oh, I can still improvise my introduction. So never ask a student that, okay, you have written the first half, now I'm not going to make you any changes. So why is this issue important to me? What experiences led to this particular issue? What makes this issue like a global problem? Who is impacted by your topic? What crowd or what local community are you focusing on? Who would be interested more in learning about this issue? Now, coming to contemporary part, so world studies extended essay can be explored on a problem which existed in the student's lifetime. So I cannot talk about something which is going to happen in future or something which has happened 100 years back. So something within students' lifetime is what we are encouraging students to explore. So these are certain examples of the topics which have received A. I'll share more on the Padlet later on because otherwise we'll end up reading. So I tried to choose 2 subjects to cover more or less all the themes. So investigating the environmental and economic impacts of the dead zone in Bay and proposing what can be done. So geography and economics, what are the obstacles and possibilities with respect to establishing a fully sovereign and independent Kurdish homelands. Now, when it comes to biology and chemistry, physics and chemistry, we have to be a little careful. So 2 subjects which are very close to each other, student will have to give you proper justification of 2 theories that they want to use. Sometimes they end up using theories which are very contradictory in nature. So in physics, when I talk about thermodynamics, the conventions are positive in nature. In chemistry, they are taken as negative in nature, and this is going to turn out to be a very bad research when a thermodynamics is being tried to identify it from disciplinary lenses. So we have to be very alert when students choose 2 subjects which are highly close to each other. So economics and BM on some side. So if student has a very good idea about BM and economics to be used, then yes, straight away we can tell them, yes, please go ahead. Sometimes economics and philosophy, physics and philosophy, they do not understand what they are trying to do. So one of the extended essays which I wanted to talk about is computer science and IT. The subjects are very close to each other, but how a report is written matters the most, because student feels if I talk about more and more technology, if I talk about the metaverse a lot, it's incorporated in my CS and IT both. Student thinks that yes, I have used many programs, I have used many technological gadgets in this, I have spoken about many developments in technology, my CS and IT both are taken care of, but then it turns out to be a very bad very bad E in this case. Yes, we can talk about religions, but let's not try to answer a question, something which is very sensitive. So question like question number 8 is very focused. It does not hurt anyone. It does not hurt anyone's sentiments. So we are talking about what they believe. We are not trying to justify who believes what. We are just trying to present a case with respect to 3 different religions and trying to draw out a conclusion with respect to certain problem which I have identified. So I'm not nowhere I'm talking or bringing my perspectives of religion into picture. That me being Hindu, I think no, this is going to happen. Now, integrate knowledge, concepts, theory, perspectives, and methods from the 2 chosen DP subjects. It can't be just descriptive in nature, it has to be more evaluative. I said there are 3 AOs that we need to follow that make it more analyze your sources, what that source is trying to tell you, then evaluate and then present your arguments. Don't just say, okay, this source tells me this is correct and I can, therefore it links to my argue. We'll have to present arguments. Elements of 2 subjects are combined in that way that they work effectively to help an argue or for my extended essay to lead to an interdisciplinary approach. So I'll have to, and okay, both the subjects should not be balanced. 50-50 is not a requirement. It could be 60-40 as well. One subject can take over the other subject a bit. So the extended essays which I have done, physics might take 55 or 60% more weightage than my other subjects, but still an interdisciplinary approach can be maintained. When we say interdisciplinary, it doesn't mean that both the subjects should be balanced. If it's okay, I have only one theory from BM, but it explains the problem which I'm trying to explain through physics, it's fine. I can still accept that. Bringing two subjects in such a way that the fresh insights from both the subject gives me answer to a problem which cannot be answered by one subject. So one of the questions which you will find me asking my student is, why can't you do this with physics? And it's okay, let DT come into picture, but why do you need physics at all? Or why do you need design technology? Or why do you need both the subjects? So the moment a student says that I have seen the evolution of design, earlier it was just two leaf, now it's a sunflower design. So design is growing and it's impacting the power output. In such cases, yes, it's an interdisciplinary essay that a student is trying to figure out. Now, how do I maintain that balance? Now, balance does not have to be evenly distributed. The relative balance will depend on your nature of the topic and the emphasis on RQ. So if I'm studying bipolar disorder with respect to physics and psychology, everyone knows from an RQ that I'm going to talk more about the psychology aspect, and I'm going to talk about physics instruments which are used in the test, or the sensors which I'm going to use in the test. Now, an interdisciplinary extended essay should demonstrate integration of elements of the two subjects. And that doesn't mean I want to see an exploration just with respect to physics, then with respect to economics, and you derive the conclusion for same argue from two different subjects, and in the final conclusion you are saying physics proves this, eco proves this, therefore my argue is answered. So most of the essays which I have received, it's like this: student does an investigation, tries to answer the question by physics, tries to answer the question by some other subject, and in the conclusion will say from both the subjects it has been seen that my RQ has been answered, and therefore whatever I said in the beginning, my hypothesis is true. This is not a proper integrative world studies extended essays. What we should do is how both the subjects answer or take a or complement each other to answer the RQ. 5-year rule and 10-year rule base of subject nature does not directly apply in world studies. World studies, if my theory or everything is applicable in students' lifetime, I'm fine with it. If there is a problem, if I'm studying an history, which history as in, even if some discovery was made 6 years back, I'm allowed to use it when it comes to world studies. But yes, we still need to check it with history teachers because the guides are changing again and again. So we just need to be very much sure. As per my latest reading, research which is greater than 5 years is also allowed in history. So contemporary is very, very important. Now, what are my different research methods and literature review? Sources, flexibility, and world studies very, 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 very important. So primary sources, a simple podcast, a simple interview, a simple online interview, a simple telephonic conversation with an expert in field is also as it can also be treated as an authentic source. Everything depends on what kind of questions you're asking. So this thing can go in the appendix section. So if I had a Google Meet with a person and I fail to record the transcripts, I can write down my interaction with my supervisor in general. I definitely will have my questions stated. The answers, it's okay if I fail to show it in an appendix, but I can always talk about the context of the conversation which I had with the expert in the field. You can have more than 2 interviews which can be treated as your primary source because you are the one who is going to collect that data. Then you can do preliminary small experiments to support your investigation. Even if I'm doing science and math, or even if I'm doing science and BM, if there was one question that do science teachers have to show an experiment or have to do a primary research to in world studies to get a good marks, it's not compulsory. A simple evaluation of secondary sources is also allowed in world studies extended essay and is treated as an authentic source. So when it comes to authentic.edu.gov, Be careful with .orgs because anyone can buy a domain of .org. So do a little research when it comes to .org sites, but .edu, .gov have few sites which are more reliable than other sources. Then try cutouts of newspapers, press, journals, few research papers are always considered as my secondary sources or good authentic sources. Sometimes nowadays we also allow Netflix documentaries as an authentic sources. So Netflix, Hotstar, but again the word is authentic. When I talk about 1983 movie, which was made on the first World Cup, which India won the Cricket World Cup, I cannot consider it as an authentic source because there is little bit of additions which a director is going to do in that movie. So if I consider it as an authentic source, what in that movie I am planning to take is also important. So documentaries is what we should rely on. Also, one of the good extended essays was on Netflix movie versus a book. The student try to integrate the economic perspective versus economics and English as their disciplinary subject and try to explain how the book was exploited with respect to movie. So I'm using harsh words, but student was very careful in doing this research and it scored a very good mark. So nowadays, as the things are technology is upgrading, the extended essay sources bank are also upgrading. When it comes to simulations which are available, or any secondary graphical tools which are available, we have to identify who made that source and how reliable is that source. And sometimes you can write to the website people and they will respond to your responses, and that responses are considered to be authentic because you reached out to a person who made that website. That person gave you certain set of evidences which you think okay you can trust on, and that becomes a reliable source. And do talk about such things in your investigation when it comes to selection of sources. These are this is like student is going out of bounds and student is trying to figure out the authenticity of sources, and scores are given on this part. Whenever you experience any problem and you overcome that problem during your research, write about it in your extended essays. All the hurdles that I have faced, if I talk about it, I am indirectly talking about ETL skills. Indirectly, I am trying to reflect on what I have learned, and this indicates critical analysis that I was being critical. I was being very cautious when it came to taking a step further. Application of sources is now one of the important things that I'm going to discuss. How would you apply these particular sources? I selected a newspaper article, but when was this newspaper article written? In what situation? There was a country under war, both the countries were under war, and a news was given out, and I'm relying on this particular news and making arguments. So I'm not looking at the second side of the picture, what somebody would have forced to publish this article. So we have to go into detail of the sources that I am identifying. And you have been seeing me talking more about sources because this is where my 12 marks come into picture. And many a times I have seen people not scoring 12 here. Integrative arguments is what we are going to talk about. So there are multiple forms of integration that you can do it with your arguments. So complex explanation, contextualization, artistic synthesis, and transdisciplinary exploration. Transdisciplinary means I can use combination of any integration. So I have seen students using BA tools, the paintings available on, so when they were doing history and physics to explore the archaeology and technology part of it, they went through many manuscripts which were old Vedic manuscripts, and they found certain sets of pictures, and not only in their country but they found it all over the places. They tried to research more and more, and online they found that these pictures show something common everywhere. So something about solar eclipse was explored, that why people were scared of solar eclipse in the olden days. So our artistic synthesis in such cases can also be used as a piece of evidence. So I'm not analyzing any art. I'm taking an art form. I'm seeing what people are talking about this art form, and then you're taking bits and parts from everywhere and framing your own integrative arguments based on the facts stated. Then we contextualize. We always see, okay, this is spoken about, this is what is there. In sciences, it's very easier. This is the data collected. These are the evaluation. Now I'm plotting a graph and my graph explains the nature. So common contextualization has never been a problem, but always use a combination of integration. Yes, I just saw a chat box cartoon. I was not looking, but yes, cartoons are also something which are very, very important. So one of the extended essays was done on the mindset of an author. So I won't go much into detail because this is this year's extended essay. So a student going through a certain psychological disorder, and when you show him or her this cartoons, he used to be very, like, you can't even make out that he has certain problems or certain issues, and that is when he used to perform the best. So cartoons used to make him under, or he used to explain things better with respect to doodles or cartoons. So if me as a teacher, I was asking him, what are you trying to achieve from this extended essay? What are you trying to show with respect to the design which you are making? The explanation, the TOK part of it was amazing. So yes, cartoons, any drawings, everything can be explored when it comes to world studies. Then complex explanation is more or less related to equality and inequality, all the sensitive topics. I can't just say that, oh, an article was published about certain law being removed from India because the public went against the government, but who has published it? So try to find more than two resources or two sources in such cases to support your arguments. Don't just rely on one, and try to give more complex explanation, and try to convince an examiner that why am I convinced, or why should an examiner be convinced by what you are stating as a fact or what you are stating as an argument. So to what extent student has done research and applied his or her sources decides how much am I going to get into critical analysis. I have seen students just picking up 2-3 different graphs from 3 different research papers and studying this graph in detail and coming to a conclusion. So understand, no written work was there. It's just 3 different graphs with respect to some different problems, but somewhere. So this is how we use secondary resources. When I go to NASA and I tell them I need weather report of last 100 years, or last 100 years or 100 months or whatever, I go and ask them, they'll give me a data. A data set has large number of variables. Now, which two variables to analyze, it's totally dependent on me. That is why secondary research is also very complex in nature. You will have to remove the data, you will have to extract the data and use the data, do certain statistical analysis on it. Same thing happens in such cases. So we have to be very, very creative in nature when it comes to forming our arguments. Now, this is my process diagram, which I always follow. So November, or now since I have changed the school, they have a policy started little early. So this is going to be shared with you, and you can, it's flexible. The months are very, very flexible, but I'm more interested in the process diagram. That is why I changed it to process diagram. This is where so my first session is always an introduction to E, either by a general session, by DPC, or subject specific presentations by teachers itself. Every school has their own policy, but when a student is given to me for world studies, I do few brainstorming sessions. Even if student is very focused, he knows what he is going to do, I keep doing sessions in groups in front of them. So let them overhear each other, let them do peer learning and debate. That is where they start thinking. If you don't let them think, they are not going to do anything. Students do few activities and review samples. So I give them good samples, I give them bad samples, and I ask them to review it. I don't tell them the marks until 1 or 2 months. I don't tell them marks, but I'll tell them review. What do you think? These are the criterias. What do you find missing? What do you find interesting? This is what they are going to review about the samples. And yes, giving sample is not a bad habit, because students should know what are the expectations from them. Then selection of global crisis, what are my problems, then subjects and RQ. If you can do it by December. So in India, we have winter breaks in December and summer breaks in June, July. So this is where I ended and asked students, when you return, come up with an argue. So I've given them enough time to think on that. Then they come up with final research question. We decide on focus and method. I go as per the criteria because criteria are very, 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 very important. So topics should be communicated accurately and effectively. And you have to justify your choice at each and every stage. Why am I choosing? Then I do my first reflection meet and then selection of sources. The moment I have my final RQ ready, I straight away create a Google Doc and ask students to write their first reflection. I call in for a small interview and then they reflect on their first reflection. Rather than doing in at the end, it's better after RQ we do it, because what are the expectations? First reflection, what student wants to do, what all things he has gone through so far is what I'm going to write. Then sources, source validation, and then I'm going to think about primary, secondary sources. Then I need introduction. If you can justify me by an introduction, that means you know what you are going to do. If your introduction is perfect, yeah, I have taken care of criteria A and B directly. This is what I do. So why I give more importance to introduction is I have to convince all the schools where I go, because introduction it matters the more. It gives me the entire story. I do n number of justifications, right from topic selection to source selection to my sources validation to what theories I am going to use. So an examiner thinks, okay, this guy is explaining each and everything right in the beginning, and my criteria and criteria B is very easy to mark because subject specific terminologies are being stated in the introduction itself. Now, okay, I'll go and I'll see how they have been applied. But yes, an examiner thinks that a student knows what to do in world studies extended essay. So yes, there is no prescribed format, but I do like to follow this format wherein I justify everything in the beginning. Then data collection or data processing, whatever you want to, based on the sources that you have done. Then we gather the data and then we start analyzing. Now comes integrative arguments. I may not be able to talk more about integrative arguments here, but yes, I want every one of you to reach out to me if you have any problems. Reach out to Toddle or do a little research on what do we mean by integrative arguments, because it's a question of 12 marks we are talking about. Then comes interim reflections. Once my arguments are made, once my sources are identified, now I'm going to make my second reflection. Then first draft comes into picture, and then as per the school, whatever they prefer. And I do understand every school, every supervisor is going to face certain challenge because of the school and management, whatever they come up with. But make it more flexible. I have made a process diagram which is going to be shared with you. This is my proposal form, which I shared with the students. A student will go, oh, sir, can I come and discuss something with you? The email ID, I have left this school, but the form was created long back. So rather than discussing at that straight moment, I simply tell my students, okay, your idea is good as a world studies. I heard you for 5 minutes. Do one thing. I'm sharing a link with you on your WhatsApp. I'm sharing a link on your email. Just fill that form and try to convince me that yes, you can do this world studies. So, ma'am, can you just post the link in the chat box so that by the time I am doing, teachers can just go through the form?
Sure.
Thank you. Now, what I'm going to do, we are going to go back to the Padlet. There is an exemplar done. I was supervisor for that student, not directly under me, but I was one of his supervisors. So I took consent from that student that I'm going to use your exemplar with my teachers, because that has been marked and everything has been done. So we are going to go back to that exemplar. What we can do is we are 21 of us. We'll break out in 3 breakout rooms. So we'll go into 3 breakout rooms. I want you all to discuss and mark it as a group in 10 minutes. So mark as much as you can. And it's okay, you might miss out on few parts, but just skim through it and just try to understand what student has done and what do you think in general, how much it's going to weigh. What would you as an examiner have given the marks to the student? So we will create 3 breakout rooms, but in the meantime, you can go to the Padlet and start reading the exam plan. Thank you. It would be great if we populate the Padlet to see what your marking is. Let's see. Or if you don't want to share marking, you can say A, B, what it looks to you. I know 10 minutes marking is difficult. We take at least 40, 45 minutes good to mark a proper extended essay. And let me tell you, I'm just sharing my experience. If a student has presented extended essay properly with proper introduction, which has given me all idea about all the processes, I end up spending less time and it just goes with the flow, and I end up getting, oh, this student scored this one, these are the criteria. I write my comments and I end up getting. But the student who does not present, I go back and I start looking for all the criteria. Can I see an evidence for this? Can I see an evidence for this? So that makes my life difficult, and I end up spending hour and a half marking on some of the extended essays as well. But there's some extended essays which are in flow, makes the life simpler sometimes. So can we put it on Padlet or in chat box? What do you think? How much is the, would you give it A, B, C, whatever are your views? Then I'll disclose the marking and then we can discuss a bit about that as well. Put it in the chat box, if not Padlet, whatever is more accessible to you. Okay, I have one response saying, so we had 3 rooms. So one is saying B, we can take in. Okay, so I'll tell you the student ended up scoring A and just on the borderline A. It's like 27 on 34. So maybe examiner realized.
That's what I was thinking. I had given around 28.
Exactly.
So
So
the ESS part that I saw was quite well explained with Sankey diagrams and everything, and then coming to the physics part also. Of course, it was a very random going through the work. Randomly, I read through, but can get an A at the borderline.
exactly. Whenever we come across such borderline problems, it just comes from within that. Let's go and check again. It's again a life between A and B. Let's go and check, can we justify a mark that we have reduced, or can we justify a mark that we have given extra? So I have not marked this. I have the markings, but it has scored an A on 27. So criteria A, which is focus and method, the student was given 5. The topic was communicated accurately and effectively. So full scores there. So I am stating my personal experience and I'm saying where the mark was taken away. The research question was stated, but there was a debate about it being little unfocused. So that is a half mark for our state. So I would still consider it okay. Let's not deduct a mark. But when we go to methodology, I'll just present my screen and I'll take through that sample quickly. Is my screen visible, Vidya?
Yes, it is visible.
Yes.
Yeah, so the title page is fine. So my presentation aspect looks good. I know which subject student is using. Title is fine. RQ is fine. Now, when we look at RQ, the problem is with respect to what a student is trying to say. Okay, to what extent I get it is 100% solar powered Cochin Airport energy efficient with respect to harnessing renewable energy resource. I know 100% solar. When I say solar, it's renewable. So it confuses a bit. So I just leave it at a half mark situation. I thought since I have to mark it holistically, I cannot start marking right from the first word. The moment I read research question, I am going to highlight few parts and keep, and I'll narrow it down when I read it again. So first time I'm going to just go through the entire E and come back and see, are there any other half mark situations so that I can take away 1 mark. So such kind of things are done when you become an examiner. So right in the table of contents, I see credibility of the investigation. So I know that, yes, okay, I need to read this part. Student is talking about a rationale somewhere. Then solar energy and environment, material and cost, efficiency. So few words are seen here. So good table of content, which is one of the compulsory part. Table of content in any format with correct page numbers is required. Even if you mess up in page numbers, the marks are taken away. One of the good things was pointed out by one of the supervisors right now when I went to breakout room. Student is defining each and every small thing. So when we had a meeting, I just advised student that don't define things in footnotes. It won't be marked and it will be in fact penalized. You can't expect an examiner to read your footnotes. So important information cannot be in footnotes. So what student ended up doing is defining renewable, defining non-renewable, sometimes what is potential energy, what is this energy. So to that extent, student went into much more detail, wasting his word count. But the introduction more or less looked good. It gave justification to more extent. So 5 was what I was also convinced with. Wherever I wanted to take 1 mark, but 5 was good. And the theme of environment was chosen as it matters heavily in present day world. So this shows the global consciousness. Yes, there is some part of global self that student is trying to reflect. Then Cochin Airport, the student talks somewhere in the essay about what that airport claims to do on its website, and that is what student was trying to investigate. Then I realized, okay, student was not able to explain properly in the RQ what was required. Then knowledge and understanding, students scored 5 again. There was aspect of physics which was not justified, which was what an examiner felt. ESS was super, but somewhere in physics something more was expected, or some kind of interdisciplinary approach was missing. So see, this is what I was saying: primary research, secondary research. Do write. I'm not saying follow the same format, but break down your researches. This is what explains source selection. So I'll just read out the criteria since we have less time. So if I want to mark someone on criteria A, and if I want to achieve full marks, I know the criteria are given, but other than that, I need to give an evidence of identifying a topic. I need to explain or justify focus. Now, when I say focus, my RQ, just my RQ being focused is not enough. I have to be focused throughout the research question. It's written in my notes. Then title, RQ is stated. Title is not compulsory, but it helps. The title is also required. Then 4,000 words, word count on the first page. Research question posed as a question. Then selection of sources, wide range of sources and good informed sources. Just say for the sake of having n number of sources or bibliography. So I always say good informed sources. Then subject skills with respect to sources. Like with respect to physics, how many sources I have, and with respect to ESS, how many sources I have. So I can balance my subjects there. Then when we come to criteria B, it's all about subject specific terminologies. How effective I was when I am using the subject specific terminologies or concepts, and how accurate is it to an examiner. So me being an expert in this field, I'll measure the accuracy. Students' accuracy, student has justified. Now it's time to see how accurate was it with respect to a supervisor. Then comes application of sources to show understanding. What evidence has, or from all the sources that you have analyzed or you have selected, what was your understanding? What do you learn from that? So some lines about that is also very important. Now coming to critical thinking, student was awarded only 8 marks on 12. So sometimes not all examiners are going to be accurate when they mark. So I would have given 6 in A, and reduce 1 more mark in critical analysis, but more or less we'll have to see A or B wala situation. So individual component marking may differ from one another, but we need to be in tolerance level. So when it comes to analysis, I need more of discussion and evaluation, higher order thinking skills being applied, and more weightage goes on evaluation and discussion and not on description. Writing is just not enough. I need discussion about my sources. I need more evaluation on what I have done. So okay, I think this is good, but somehow I think my sources were not enough to justify my conclusion. This is my evaluation. I'm saying that I didn't have sources, but I tried my best to get an answer. So that becomes more evaluative in nature. Then the criteria assesses to what extent thinking skills have been employed, decision making, wherein how student was under a certain problem and how you overcame. So evaluation of application of sources to support your argument. This is what I am saying. If you want to fetch more marks in critical thinking, may it be any subject, give evidence for source selection, which we have done. Now, if I'm making certain statements, if I'm saying this is true with respect, this is what this source is saying, evaluate the source at that particular moment. Tell them that it's a newspaper article. According to the newspaper article, this is happening, but I think there can be a little ambiguity due to this reasons. This is where you are talking about application of sources to support argument. And in one situation, I have also seen a student doing a very smart work, saying that this newspaper is claiming this, but I think this is not true because my other two sources does not support this argument. So when you dig deeper, you come to know that this source is not good enough. So I'm discarding this argument. So this is application of sources to support my arguments. So this is what a student should do rather than just taking source, reading, oh, this is done, this is my facts, these are my claims, done. So don't expect this. Most students do that. So a title plus RQ is must when it comes to presentation. So D mark, criteria D, if I don't write title, I will have to take away a half mark, then I'll have to find another half mark to take the full mark. So title page should be there. So cover page with title and RQ. Then theme, global theme on main page, not a compulsion, but should be there. It will be great. Then the proper layout is maintained. The tables are labeled. The graphs are labeled. It looks neat. It's not more clustered and very difficult to follow. Figures and illustrations are there to support your argument. So once it happened that I told my student to put an image of a book in a English investigation. So it was English and side, but the student ended up coming, my English teacher told, why you're putting a book, you're wasting, it's not going to get marked. English mein aisa nahi chalta. This doesn't work in English. So I said, it's okay, it works in world studies, you are trying to support, because one of her statement was, this particular abnormality can be reflected from the picture as well. And when you look at the cover page of that book, it sends out a very good message, which when we dig deeper, we came to know even the author claimed it on his website. Okay, yes, this is what I was trying to showcase on my, so again, an artistic way of doing analysis. Then comes your referencing. Bibliography in alphabetical order is must in proper format and consistent. I cannot write access date in 3 places and 1 in another place. It's same as not writing access dates or not writing in alphabetical ways. Author, date of published, title, pages. This is important. And if bibliography is not proper, we have to flag an extended essay saying that maybe there is something fishy going on with extended essay. There are situations wherein bibliography is not mentioned, then it's straight away flagged. So word count, if it crosses 4,000, we don't read after 4,000 words. So if student claims that I am not going to delete, I have submitted 4,000 words. So last 5,000 or 500 words won't be counted. Same goes with RPPF form as well. So overall marks was 27 with presentation as 4, engagement as 5, critical analysis 8, which was still weak. The main idea of presenting this sample was, this is a moderate sample. I'll definitely upload a very good sample which has scored more than 30 with good analysis, like 11 on 12 wala critical analysis on Padlet as we finish this particular thing. So let's look at an RPPF sample on the Padlet. So I'll also present my Padlet, and you can also go on a Padlet and just check this particular RPPF form. So this is not related to the same exemplar, but I just pulled it out from one of the resource websites. So we can just go through it once. Yes, Rupesh ji.
Yeah, thank you. I just actually want to ask, like when I look at this RQ is talking about energy efficiency. And when I start reading this extended essay, so we get an idea that, okay, what the purpose of this is that this research is basically they're trying to understand how much this project is efficient enough. When you actually read the rationale part, I think it's page number 10. In that one of the line, it says that This case study tries to examine the ways and limitations of this project involving its target to reduce contribution to the carbon footprint, promoting environmental sustainability and successful uh, electricity generation, which is an efficiency of renewable resource. So, I mean, I marked this essay down mainly because of I couldn't get the clarity on the term efficiency. That which time, I mean, efficiency can be applied to anything. It could be a yield, it could be input to output ratio,
Exactly.
frankly, I couldn't get a clear idea of what aspect of efficiency the student is trying to measure, because even during the course of study, student went into material cost, but that material cost and the cost of input and cost of output, that aspect was not dealt with. Uh, so
Properly.
I personally marked it like around a high C and on a borderline of a C and a B.
Exactly. So one of the instructions as an examiner which is given to us is appreciate the work that student has done. As an expert in the field, we know there are 10 different things that a student could have done better. So that is what I'm saying. My first year of marking was horrible. I did mark 20 properly, but then the seeding paper were there. First two I qualified, but the third one I couldn't get it. I said there are so many mistakes, but still. Then I had a personal meeting with my team leader and he said that you are not finding mistakes in student. Try to appreciate. You have criteria in hand. See to what extent student is meeting a criteria. I understand, okay, it's not meeting this line, it's not meeting that particular aspect. There is lack of this formula, another formula could have been used, but student has spent 18 months 2 years in this particular extended essay. So try to appreciate and be holistic in nature. And there are some parts which you will find not connected to the essay. Remove it, consider them as half mark situation, and then start marking. So also happens in a theory exam. We are a little critical in our marking, but then when IB examiner marks, there is ECF, there are other marks, there are 10 different ways to support the students. So I think it's more student centric. And yes, I do agree with the suggestions which you have given, and that is what there are certain limitations to what a supervisor can also go for a student. We have been telling indirectly to a student that these are the certain parts which you need to take care of. So she might have understood 60% of it, but not the 40% of it. So more or less, when we balance out on an holistic scale, the student ended up scoring well. So since we have less time, so this was one of the sample which I shared with you. We can reflect on that sample. So this is the proper format which I prefer: cover page, table of contents, introduction, analysis. So introduction is big. We have spoken more about intro, conclusion, evaluation, or conclusion and evaluation can also go as a topic. If you're not sure about conclusion and evaluation both, take it as a common category. Bibliography and appendix. Fonts Arial 11 or Times New Roman 12, double spacing, A4, portrait mode. Bibliography, whatever your school prefers or librarian suggests. We know the word count and RPPF form requirements. So any questions that we have 5 minutes to discuss. I'm open to any questions now. And sometimes I just, with respect to the question which was asked to me, sometimes I can get an extended essay of English and an history, which I'm not an expert in. So I'll have to stick with criteria and stick to students' views and I'll mark. So an expert in a field might feel, oh, this is not good. So there is always a tolerance in marking involved. So that we have to take care of. So that always happens. And okay, you can always tell your students that explain everything to an examiner. So that is what I tell my students. If your mom is not expert in that field, make your mom read your if she can explain you, and try your peer or try your person who have no idea about physics to read your extended essay and ask them back to reflect on it. If they are reflecting it better properly, that means you have written it well. If they are telling something else, misunderstand, they are not making sense. And same thing is going to happen when your examiner of world studies is not from the subject. So that is what I told to this girl, and she ended up explaining everything in very detail. So somehow we need to present views to kids properly. Any questions or any questions in chat box that I have missed out?
There is one question, Dr. Trivedi, by Mr. Gopal Menon. This is regarding the timeline and the workflow and the process flow that you had shown. So the question is, after the introduction, which I assume would be led by the EE coordinator, which of these activities are led by the coordinator and which by the supervisor?
All by the supervisor. I am little harsh. I said coordinator has done his part introducing the E. Now my role is here to guide my students properly, because I know what world studies is. My coordinator might know, but I want to take it more. I want to develop that relationship with the student where we talk, we discuss, where I play a proper role of supervisor. So I do most of the activities with kids. Sometimes I just give them a quest. I give them question and ask them, go explore. This is your free period. I'm releasing you from my class. Go get an answer. Sit wherever you want, discuss. Then he comes back, we discuss. So everything depends on how you want to take it forward. But it would be better because you are also going to write teacher's comment, and that are also read. I'm not saying they are taken critically, but they are read. So somehow, sometimes we come to know that one of the teachers wrote that this student is facing some problem, has dyslexic, is ADHD, or sometimes has some problem. So you can make out that it's not the problem with English, it's the student's health which is making him write in this particular way. So those kinds are taken rather than putting him down on presentation. This kind of aspects are taken care by coordinators and the supervisor. Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Ms. Ritu. But thank you all for being patient and listening to me. I feel there's so much to speak about world studies. Do you recommend world studies extended essays should be given to? I always think it's okay if we give it to subject specific people and let them share. I was discussing this in one of the breakout rooms also. The problem is, me as a physics extended essay person, I want an in-depth investigation. World studies does not require that. I need more arguments than more of the evidences which single subject would be. And I'm dealing with a global problem, local case study, local global aspect and everything. So I feel there should be some world studies coordinator or world studies person who is actually going to be in a room with two supervisors initially while the introduction is written, and all introductions to be read by world studies person so that you can guide them at that particular moment. So I'm more into that because I don't want it to be more physics E or more chemistry E or more BME. I want it to be more balanced, which only a person expert in the field can explain, or who have spent more time doing world studies can explain. Over to you, Ms. Ritu.
Okay, so with this, we come to the end of the session. Thanks a lot, Dr. Trivedi, once again for the wonderful session today. I'm sure everyone who joined in has taken away very, very useful insights. We would also like to take 15 minutes of your time for a Toddle platform walkthrough to show you how Toddle can help you with the EE process at your school. This session will take place today at 1:30 p.m. GMT after the closing session. You can join using the link on chat. I'm just putting the link on chat right now. We have a short survey for you to complete after the session. We would love to hear from you on how we can accommodate your requests for the next event. And here is the link for the EE session that we're going to have after the closing session. Please do join in. Thank you very much once again, everyone, for joining in. I hope it was a useful session for you. Thank you, Dr. Trivedi, once again.